Ancient scriptures and modern times. Ancient language and modern communication. Are the ancient books still applicable to the time that we live in? What about the really difficult languages that these books are written in? Are they really applicable to the simple time that we live in? Let's simplify that on Simply Explain. Namaskar. In the year 2020 that we live in, and of course, a few decades from now, questions have always been asked about the legitimacy of our scriptures. As Hindus, we often pattern our life based on what is written in ancient books. In a Hindu family, the foundation of that family is our dharma, where when we want to raise our children, cultivate traditions, and cultivate values, and of course give them those values to make a life out of them, we refer to our scriptures. We go back and we learn about the way Sri Krishna has lived his life. We look at the way Sri Ram has lived his life as a family-oriented person. We look at Sri Krishna in his different stages, and we try to make sense out of it as a child, as a grown adult, a young man and as a grown adult. We look at Shivaji, how he always carried himself, and of course we take those aspects of life and we try to materialize it into our lives. But are they still applicable to the times that we live in? Let's look at the scriptures and in the time that they were created. The Vedas, there can be no time. There's an estimation of time in which they are written. Rig Veda, the oldest of all the Vedas. The West is today trying to find a time when they can say that the Vedas were written Rig Veda. Rig Veda talks about the great chantings of all the rituals that we do. Oldest of them. Yajur Veda talks about all the mantras of sacrifice. Sama Veda, the Veda of the music. Atharva Veda, the Veda of the medicines. Those Vedas were actually written before this world was created. Then we have the modern texts that we call them, right? We call Ramayana, for example, Ramcharitmanas, written by Goswami Tulsidas ji. That was written in the 16th century. We're living in 2020. Bhagavad Gita was written over 5,000 years ago, or was narrated, by the way, 5,000 years ago, from Sri Krishna to Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Gita was recited even before that by Lord Krishna Bhagwan to Bhagwan Surya Vivaswan. Then we look at the Puranas. Purana means old. They are, of course, very old. Shiva Puran, Bhagavad Mahapuran, and so on. They are very old scriptures. How do we take those ancient scriptures, the guidance in those scriptures, and apply it to modern times? Are they still relevant? Well, let's break that down and try to understand how relevant they are. You see, the entire cosmos is a product of science, of physics. No matter what we do today, or what aspect of life we chose, or what the world becomes today, if we're building buildings and skyscrapers when they are not available many years ago, it is a result of it is a product of a basic, science. The science did not change. The science was there. In later stages, we discovered what those sciences are, but the science is still there. We have evolved using that science to make buildings, to ensure that communication is done in a far better way than it was previously. Today, a person can pick up a phone and dial someone from any part of the world and connect with them in milliseconds. Video conferencings are happening, things that were not done 10, 20 years ago. Now it is happening. It is not new science that has really allowed this to happen. It is not modern science that have allowed this to happen. It is the very ancient science that still existed that is now being discovered to make all these things materialize. Our Hindu tradition, the oldest tradition ever, which, of course, there is no date of its founding. That's why it's called Satya Sanatan Dharma. There is no date that we can trace to say this date Satya Sanatan Dharma began. Religions of today, modern religions, you can find a date. Every day there is some religion that has been created. But Satya Sanatan Dharma, there is no date that we can say it was founded at this time. It is unfounded. The relevance of its scriptures, let us look at them. Similar to that of science, where science is an arrangement of the universe into activities that give different products, our scriptures are the same. The Vedas, although so ancient, they are very much applicable to the modern times we live in. What are written in the Vedas? The Rig Veda talks about the rituals. The pujas that happen, the mantras that go with that. The mantras of Shiva, the mantras of Narayana, most of the suktams are written in the Vedas. Today it is used to enhance energy in a very divine way. Most of the temples, the Vedic temples, you would go and you'll feel a different sense of energy that reside there. And that is why we leave our homes and we go to a temple. We have another video regarding that. It's a different sense of energy because the mantras of Rig Veda are chanted. Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya, Sahasra Shirsha Puruchaha, and so on are chanted there. And it energizes the environment. Yajur Veda talks about the mantras of sacrifices, of course. Sama Veda tells us about music. Today, music has evolved from one simple, powerful tool called music to so many forms of it, all of it which came from Sama Veda. And Atharva Veda, of course, talks about the medicines. It gives us about the science of medicine. And today, medicine, of course, is not something used by Hindus alone. It is used by the world. The application of the four Vedas, although so ancient, are still applicable to the time, are still practical to the time that we live in. Because bliss is not something that is only for the 16th, 7th, 18th century. Happiness, energy, medicine, these are not only the things that were only practiced or only experienced in those times. As a matter of fact, it is more necessary in the time that we live in. Then we look at the more simpler, I wouldn't say simpler, but the more familiar text, the Ramayana that was written in the 16th century by Tulsidas Ji. He began writing the Ramayana on Chaitra Mas Naumi Tithi on Ram Naumi Day in Ayodhya, completed it in Varanasi. In the Ramcharitmanas, life itself is revealed. Bhagwan Ram, such a very simple but significant figure of our lives, showed us how to live life among struggles. He was not the one who came and allowed magic. He did not raise his hands. He did not use any powers within him or any part of his body, as a matter of fact, to demonstrate physical prowess. No. He showed us that struggles are important in life in order to succeed. Because Ram Bhagwan wanted us to understand that although we have the most complex, full-fledged machine in this world, we sometimes will fall because we do not know how to use it. Ramcharitmanas, when we look at the life of Bhagwan Ram, it's a life of disaster. He was a prince. He never crowned king. When he was going to be crowned the king, he was sent away to the forest. Wife was stolen. Fought with an army of bears and monkeys. Went to Sri Lanka, fought the demon. His brother was shot. It's just, most of it was pure disaster. But we revere him the most because his life was simple. His life was meaningful. And his life is more applicable to our lives. Because no matter what we have in this life, maybe we are wealthy or maybe we are not, we will struggle or we have struggled so many days in our life. What is written in Ramayana is still practical and applicable to the day that we live in. We must learn to govern. We must learn to raise our children. Pratakala uthaira gunata, mata pita guru navahi mata. Bhagwan Ram, if we want to learn how to raise our children, we look at the life of Sri Ram. He would wake early in the morning. He would give respects to his mother. He would bow to his mother, his guru, his father. He would go and play. He lived a very balanced life. He would go study. Tulsidas Ji remarked that it was amazing to see how the knower of the Vedas, the possessor of the Vedas, goes to school and learns something. His life is remarkable. And that is why today, the world embraces and still accepts Ramayana. And of course, there are questions about its legitimacy and its practicality in the time that we live in. Of course, the ignorant will always say those things. But scriptures are made not only for a particular time, but for a lifetime that we have lived, scriptures are still applicable. The Bhagavata Mahapurana talks about the life of Sri Krishna, a text that was written, of course, by Vedavyasa. Vedavyasa wrote the life of Sri Krishna. His avatars, his 10 avatars are documented in there. The coming of the 10th, of course, is documented in there. And more so focuses on Sri Krishna Leela. The peak of the Srimad Bhagavatam is Dasham Skanda. And the heart of Dasham Skanda is the Gopi Geet. Although it was written, friends, in a time that is far different from that we live in right now, still, when the Srimad Bhagavatam is recited, the essence of it, the shlokas, the life of Sri Krishna, it brings so much sweetness. And even if it's for a moment, it brings those sweetness. It means that it has some value in our life. Many have, in India, for example, when Bhagavatam is narrated, people gather in tens of thousands. I remember a time in Vrindavan, as I was visiting, I visited one of the Kathakar, the narrator, he was narrating Srimad Bhagavatam. It was in the month of April, and it was a little hot, but there was at least 30,000 people assembled on the big tent to listen to Srimad Bhagavat Katha. Of course, you would question, how is it that, the science there and the sound, everything was just spot on. And they sat and they listened, and afterwards they went away. Because it has the ability still to sweeten our lives, to catch our attention, and to inspire us in some way that we can go now and make ourselves better people. The Puranas, as we look at them, Puran means old. These are very old scriptures. Shiv Puran, Garud Puran, of course, Bhagavat Mahapurana. These are very old by the nature, by the sound of the name alone. It's very old. This is modern times. Values, my friends, values never expire. Good conduct never expires. Good life never expires. Good teaching, there is not an expiration ticket on it, because they are all things that will mold us. Just like the earth. If the earth expires, we will cease to live on it. The earth is always very fertile. And age after age, the soil that we walk upon, you know how many have walked upon the soil already? The soil that we grow our plants upon, you know how many have farmed, have done farming on it already? But still, the earth collects all the nutrients it has, and it gives generation after generation. There's the farming families. People in the West Indies, they do that. The father was a rice farmer. His son is a rice farmer. The grandson is a rice farmer. The great-grandson, and it goes on, and the granddaughters and the great-granddaughters. They all take up. They farm on the same land that was given by their ancestors. Mother Earth does not cease in any way to give nutrients to those who are, of course, sowing the seeds on them. And so what happens? The Vedas. Although there is no documented date on when the Vedas are written, although Ramayana was documented in the 16th century and Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, of course, over 5,000 years ago, they still very much apply to the time that we live in. Why, my friends? Because values never get old. Today, out of all the times, this video is done in 2020, in the month of June, where the world is such a dark place today. The dark clouds are hovering over us. The viruses are taking over the world, the siren viruses. This is a time when we need to go back. This is a time when we need to go back and open the pages of those scriptures and extract, of course, the values of patience. Dhriti kshama damosteyam sauchamindriya nigraha. Dhir vidya satyama krodho dashama dharma lakshanam. The 10 commandments of Hinduism written in Manusmriti, they are still applicable to the time that we live in. We must have patience, fortitude, forgiveness, cleanliness. These are the things that are still required in the times that we live in. These ancient scriptures, friends, are not documented as to be read as a story and to only enjoy for a moment, but they are documented and meant to be lived. There's an old song by Pradeep. Dekh tere sansar ki halat kya ho gaye Bhagwan, कितना बदल गया इंसान, कितना बदल गया इंसान. सूरज न बदला, चांद न बदला, ना बदला रे आसमान, कितना badal gaya insan. Look at how the world has changed. Suraj na badala, chand na badala, na badla re asaman. The sun hasn't changed, the moon hasn't changed, the skies haven't changed, but people have changed drastically. Change is a necessity in life. Change is a necessity, but not from our identity into another. To change our identity into another identity is not the change that is required. We have to adapt to the times that we live in, but not change from the values that got us in this place. To simply explain this, the ancient scriptures are value-based and value-driven scriptures. Values do not expire. Please embrace the values. And if at all there is a question whether the language still applies to today, Sanskrit, the mother of all languages. Sanskrit means the pure language. It is a language where there is one way to spell something, there is only one way to pronounce something. Not like English language. It is the pure language. And so the language that has created all other language, Sanskrit, Matrubhasha or Deva Bhasha, the language of the Devatas, still applicable to the time that we live in. Sanskrit is not a dying language. As a matter of fact, when Sanskrit is recited and chanted, it really suppresses the environment of all its negative omens, gets the attention of our people, and commands the presence of the divine. Although ancient, it is still practical and applicable in the times. May you embrace your ancient scriptures. May you continue to embrace the traditions of our Dharma, and may you make time to embrace the language that has made us who we are today. Namaste.